This episode of Ladder Legacy is proudly sponsored by the Bedford Group Insurance, helping families and businesses protect what matters most. Whether it's coverage for your home, your family, your team, or your future, Bedford's got your back with the best reliable insurance solutions in Florida. Visit our website to learn more, bedfordinsurance.com. And now on to your episode.
Hey, everybody, this is Rudy Romero with From Ladder to Legacy. Today, we're joined by somebody who doesn't just understand people, she sees what others miss, Dr. Monis. She spent over 2 decades operating at the intersection of psychology, business strategy, and human performance, advising in some of the highest stakes environments from boardrooms to complex family dynamics. Dr. Ann brings a rare ability to align clarity, decisiveness, and human behavior to help people, organizations achieve what they want to reach and what they will reach. Dr. Ann, welcome to Ladder to Legacy. I'm excited to have you on here. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me. You make me sound a lot fancier than I am, but I appreciate the intro.
Just so everybody understands, and we're very informal here, Dr. Ann, she's wrote a book in like less than a year. She went to Harvard. She's like plastered all over the world. So just so everybody knows, she is much more fancy than I even made her out to be.
Fair enough.
Dr. Ann, in your best words, because that's what the listeners want to hear, tell me a little bit about what you're up to now, because I know you as a person are in literally the proverbial every place known to man in Florida. You are just, as they say, slaying it out there. You're crushing it. So I want to know, what are you doing right now that you're most excited about?
I am in the anti-aging space. I started in psych, so it's a huge shift. And we are getting into such exciting new technology, software, anti-aging peptides, hormones, weight loss. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah, I've been hearing a lot about peptides and everyone's on this Ozempic kick. Everybody wants to be skinny and beautiful, right? That's the whole world is. But I'm sure there's more to it than just taking medication and these pills and all this fun stuff. What type of situations or protocols are you working with now that are making people feel more excited to be with Dr. Ann than anybody else out there?
So I don't treat the patients myself. I own and co-founded a clinic. And then I have 6 other clinics in the state of Florida that do various other things. But the main focus with the weight loss is we want to lose weight, we want to do it safely, and we don't want to lose our muscle mass. So something that we try to hone in on in our clinics and the patients that I supervise and sort of the structure that I create around our concept is lose weight, look great, feel great, but we don't want to deteriorate your physiology while doing it.
And now are you seeing that from, obviously you said you're overseeing all these clinical practices. Are you seeing that outside of your clinical practice, other clinicians are not looking at it from a 360 view to make sure that the patients are well-rounded?
So the short answer is yes. But in many cases, we also know that patients don't always listen. So we can say things till we turn blue. The patient has to decide whether they're going to take that advice. So yes, in some cases, maybe they're doing weight loss, not the rest of the peptides, maybe not the rest of the protocol as clinicians. And then on the other side, the patients just may not be listening very well.
Well, talk about listening. Let's give them and the viewers, because again, big words we're using here. What's just kind of a general, what is a peptide for some of these people listening who's like, what are these magical things you're talking about that's supposed to make me skinny and beautiful?
So they're a chain of amino acids. They're something our body makes anyway. It's not something that is foreign to our body. The issue is that as we age, we simply make less and less of these amino acids. And as our productivity or production lowers, so does our energy and cellular structure. So that is the very short, abbreviated, simple version of a peptide. And then in the way of the weight loss, it's a peptide that is created to help us lose weight. And it works wonderfully, as you know, because you see it everywhere. The problem is that after prolonged use, we could lose some of our muscle mass and see side effects. So that balance comes in as providers and as a patient, it's not limited to the provider, to understand that and then do something to combat it.
And what did you start seeing this shift in the market? I know post-COVID, everybody has been talking more about peptides, about compound pharmacies, about all these fun stuff that is new buzzwords to the market. When did you start getting more involved? Because I mean, you sound so well spoken on it. You've obviously been doing this for a while. Tell me more about it.
Right. So actually, talk about the business side of medicine, a failed endeavor. Right around COVID, I had already opened a clinic. It was inside of Powerhouse Gym. We started this whole huge, amazing practice. We had great partners. And we're doing pretty well with hormones and peptides. And that was pretty early for this movement, right? We were just at the precipice. And COVID came. And because our office was inside of a wellness center, we were shut down and we couldn't get in. And so we had to recalibrate and start over. And so post COVID, we started again.
That's amazing. So you didn't just give up. And that's the whole point, right? Is when business throws something in front of you. And that's a whole nother piece of you that I think a lot of people are going to learn more about today. The business side of Dr. Ann, right? You're not just Dr. Ann. Dr. Ann has such a interesting past. When it comes to the new world of doing business, many providers struggle to balance patient care with profitability. In
Right.
your experience, what are some ethical or business of medicine? What does that look like today?
So it's a complicated landscape and it's no fault of their own. And it isn't something that was foreseen or expected. When our doctors, when our clinicians, when those people that deliver expert care to you and your family, when they decided to do this, they didn't know that they were going to wake up one day and AI would show up and everything would change and they suddenly would need to use technology that they don't know how to use. So, as much as all of this has simplified our medical practices and simplified life, it's also changed a lot of what's happening in the world and what is happening to the medical practices around you. So, these physicians, these clinical teams, all of these things that are happening need to be adjusted. And now you're looking at the question of ethics. Well, is it ethical to do this? Can I do this? That's not how I was taught. And really, if you look around and you look at our current landscape, I mean, healthcare has become a business. This is now a business. This is not a practice. This is not a clinical first setting. It is first a business, and we provide expert care.
Now, how are you doing it differently? How are you challenging the status quo? Because I love what you're saying there, because I've had a few other people on the show who talked about that the medicine physicians have been forced into this business mentality, but you have a business background. So how are you kind of combating it, being fair to your patients, but also obviously driving numbers? Because there is a bottom line that has to be met at the end of the day.
I cheated. I was an MBA first, and then
Mhm.
a law school dropout, and then got a doctorate. So I think in a way, I bifurcated the clinical first, business later model by being business first and being fortunate enough to wear both hats. When you really break this down and think about it, what is happening with these clinicians that are coming out of medical school and they're going out into the world, they're not getting business school. They are getting clinical training and then they are running a business second to that. And that creates burnout and that creates confusion and they don't know where to go with that. So the best advice that I have when people come to me and say, "What am I going to do?" You're not in business. You need to become a business person first and then understand what's happened. And they say, "That's not what I want to do. I went to school for my entire life." Quite literally, they went to school their whole lives. Okay, great. Let's teach you or hire a consultant or partner with someone or a CEO or an entity to teach you how to do that because you are an excellent physician. You just may not be able to wear both hats.
Yeah, and I think it's funny you say that, both hats. I mean, you tried wearing three, but nevertheless, you're obviously an overachiever in that respect. And it's great to have somebody like yourself who, again, is a physician, but also has such a strong business background. With the psychology of the business background, how does it change your mindset or behavior when you're playing the role of both, patient outcomes and success in medical business?
You're making it sound super glamorous. It's not. In the clinical world, I'm shunned because I'm business forward. And in the business world, I'm shunned because I'm a clinician. So it's an interesting convergence at this stage of my life and my career where everything has finally come together and people appreciate that. But 15 years ago, when I was doing this, they said, "Oh, you're neither." And nobody really wanted to have that conversation. Here we are now. It's 2026. We're seeing PE money, we're seeing venture capital, we're seeing huge
Mhm.
cash, huge money is coming into this industry. And suddenly, like, oh, thank God we have someone with an MBA that understands clinical care too. And that's sort of changed the game.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if you weren't already understanding it, right, you're just going to get rolled over by some of these VCs and the PE groups. I mean, they are
Yeah.
definitely making, especially in the Fort Lauderdale area, but us in West Palm, Wall Street South has definitely made an impact on the market, not just in your medicine segment, but also in, trade based segments and other finance segments. Things are just building and building. How do you keep your head on straight with everything though? Because I mean, you have to keep medicine and business together. How do you balance it? How do you do that?
You hire really smart people. I worked in the Broward County court system for a while as a forensic expert. I still do from time to time, but there was a judge that I liked in particular. And my favorite thing he used to say is, "Brilliant people cost money. Be quick and get out of my courtroom." So I think he was right. I think that when you're entering a project or an area or a topic that you know less about, your job is to admit that you know less about it and rely on people who know more. And I think what happens because of that clinical training and that background, there's a little bit of a resistance or a tendency to shy away from merging the two concepts. And I think that really what's happening is practitioners, the clinicians who don't want to merge business with medicine are going to be in a difficult position.
Yeah, and I think you hit a head on. It's humility, right? And these physicians learning something that they may have been not never taught. I mean, that's and to me, it's amazing to think that because if you're in a trades-based business, you're required to have some, you know, higher business acumen, especially when you're studying for licensing tests.
Right.
That it sounds like physicians are just not getting that opportunity. And I guess what's the solution? How do we inform them, or do they even want to be informed? I guess that's the next question. Do they care?
So, in my experience, some of them do, some of them don't. I have been dealing with that for about 10 years now, to give or take. Consulting, trying to build with certain practices, understanding when there's a lot of pushback. I can't really blame them. You have to think about, take a step back and widen your lens. I mean, these people went to school forever. They spent their whole lives wanting to help people. They're smart, they're capable, they're intelligent, they're professional, they know what they're doing. And then you come into their practice and you say, everything you've been doing, I want you to do it a different way. And they're looking at you as if you've fallen from the sky. Why would I do that? And who are you? And why I'm smarter than you? Well, I never said you weren't. I'm just saying that business and medicine have both been around for the same amount of time. And now you need to borrow some of my tools if you want this to continue.
And you're offering those tools out there right now, right? We were talking about that book that you were working on or you've already finished. Is that part of the tool to help some of these young entrepreneurs or young practices get to the point where they can be more successful?
So, yes and no. It's for those top high functioning, probably people who are missing a little something and not understanding why they're exhausted or why they're feeling like they're aging a lot faster than they should be. It's for those of us who try to throw biology in the mix and medicine and prescriptions and aren't understanding that there's something else. And it's for everybody, really, to understand that the ageless mind, which by the way is the name of the book, Ageless Minds,
Love
it's the
it.
convergence of psychology and biology. Because no matter how many prescriptions we write, we're still going to be sleep deprived or anxious or malnourished if we don't take care of ourselves. And on the other side of that, if you have diabetes or you're ill or need treatment, it doesn't matter how much sleep and rest I tell you to take and how much relaxing time at the beach I prescribe, you're going to need medicine. So we really need to understand that these things have to be taken as a whole, and one will not substitute the other.
So is it going to a point where we've gone so, and this is not you, just other practice have begun so, the model of turning and burning, right? Just, hey, let's put it through insurance. Let's upcharge. Let's just keep going and getting the next patient in. Cause I've definitely been to GP offices that felt like that. Doesn't mean they are, but they felt that way. It's a more holistic approach where the acceptance of alternative medicines with the mix of Western medicine, is that kind of what you're seeing as a new pattern that's kind of emerging?
So I think the churn and burn is one of those things that's going to be phasing itself out, and not for any reason other than the providers are exhausted. We're looking at inflation that's simply not sustainable in the way of hiring and retaining. So third party payers haven't increased what they're paying. The providers want to be paid more, and you can't blame them because inflation is high. So they need more money to sustain their lifestyle. Third party payers are not paying more money. So now we have a deficit. And who's suffering? The patient. The patient is sitting there in this huge wait list waiting for someone who accepts their insurance. So that's one problem. I was in a friend of mine's derm practice this week. I went for him to take care of a few things. And he says to me, hey, how's it going down the street? We're literally on the same street. And I'm like, I don't know. How's it going here? It's the same probably. And he's like, I saw 59 patients the other day. And I just looked at him. I was like, how? And he says, and he's cracking up and he looks at me and he goes, I don't know. I'm too old for this. And we're laughing together because he's my neighbor at home. We live down the street at home and our practice is down the road. And I said, what happened to that nurse practitioner that you had here? He looks at me and he goes, she was so busy worrying about how busy her schedule was that she never actually got to the schedule. So she would sit there staring at the schedule, talking about being busy. It consistently humors me. People who talk about how busy they are, people who are lack organization and structure, and then tell you how busy they are. They talk about being busy. But when you're busy burning and churning and seeing 59 patients in a day, you don't have time to tell me how busy you are
No. Yeah.
because you're busy.
Well, you're getting the
So
work done, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, so what's the plan? And he looks at me, he goes, well, I was going to ask you that. So I said, well, what are you doing? He said, well, all of my friends and colleagues are moving into peptides. How's that going for you? I said, it's fine. It's great. But we're not practicing your traditional medicine. I mean, my friend is in his early 50s and has practiced derm, primary, ER. I mean, this is an amazing physician. And
Yeah.
he says, I'm just having a hard time letting go of what I love doing just because it's making cash. But he's exhausted from dealing with those third party insurance agencies. He's white.
Yeah. And I can imagine. I mean, we obviously hear all the stories on the news. We see it in our media, right? With all the TV shows and all the doctor, physician, this, we hear it from
Yeah,
our smaller physician practices, and they're all saying the same thing.
right.
Dr. Ann, what's the magic wand? I mean,
Hmm.
this is that I don't know any better. So I ask you, what's the magic wand? What can we do to help these physicians? I know there isn't enough out there. There's not enough
Right.
NPs, not enough nurses, there's not enough any health professional. There's such a deficit right now. How do you fix that?
So there's a deficit of good physicians, of good nurses. I think what's happening is there is a dissonance in the amount of money that is reasonably payable versus what is needed and what they want. And as a CEO, I can tell you that I have clinicians that come in and ask for a certain amount of money that we simply can't pay. First problem. Second problem, we need to widen the lens again. So that's one of my favorite things to say. Widen your lens. You're not looking at it completely. Hire a team of people that isn't maybe clinical. You are officially in sales. You are a
Mhm.
sales room. You have a great doctor, you have a great MA, and the rest of the people in your practice, they're in sale.
Yeah, always be selling, right? That's the
You're in sale.
unfortunate. Doesn't matter what you're doing in business, and anytime you're interacting with the general public, you're in a sales position. You always have to be ready to be able to provide them with an alternative option, right? For them to be
The other
taken.
thing is you're seeing I talk to the clinicians and they'll say to me, the practice owners, whomever, and they'll say, oh, well, we can't do that campaign until we have all of these automations in place. We can't scale this until this is in place. We can't. And I'm like, well, it's a chicken or the egg. Because if you slow burn these referrals and you sit here for the foreseeable future, you're never going to have the money to invest in this software or in whatever campaign we're talking about. But if you don't do that, you're going to be basically passed over because there are people in VC money and PE money and all kinds of
Mhm.
huge money coming into longevity right now that do have the money to invest in those campaigns. So, which do you want to be?
Now, do you think that's a good thing with all this VC money coming in? And I go to double-edged sword because I've been
It's
in
a
the
great
development
question.
world. I have to ask it. It may be a little, may not be to say the right question, but hey, what are your thoughts on it?
So, I have a lot of thoughts on it. To say it plainly, I think it has virtually eliminated a lot of business. And I say that not because they're not doing business, but it has eliminated opportunity for people with less money to do business. So we used to be able to do a roll up and get, I don't know, 5, 6 doctors together. They do a merge and then they exit, right? They sell it to VC, whatever. Now they're coming in on their own. They're doing the roll up. They're bringing so much money in that things don't make sense anymore. You used to look at each other and have some type of commercially acceptable anchor to things. But the multiples have grown, the stakes are super high, and they're bringing in the kind of money we saw in oil money, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about serious money here. And so, is it good? Yeah, it's great in certain ways, right? We have more AI, we're developing tools, research. That money is helping us grow it light years, but I mean decades within just 6 to 12 months. We are making leaps and bounds. On the other hand, we have providers that have been in business for a really long time that I'm watching sell off their practices because they can't keep up. They're not able to buy the software. They're not able to keep up with the advances, and they're not making enough money on the insurance side. So they don't know how to practice medicine anymore.
What's the downstream effect? Because obviously, what you just said, they don't have to practice medicine anymore. The patient, right? The patient is the one who suffers at the end.
Right. You have wait lists. I have wait lists in our mental health clinics that you wouldn't believe. And it's not because we don't want to provide the services. We want to. It's just the clinicians want to be paid an amount of money that exceeds the amount of money paid by the third party payer. So
And
how do we bridge that gap?
And that's the question is how do we bridge the gap? Is the problem the gap itself? Is it the middle person or the person that's causing that to be the problem? Is it the insurance payers, the third parties, like you said? Because I know a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of people in this type of realm of wellness that honestly aren't even taking insurance anymore. They want nothing to do with it. They just want
They've
to go
switched to
cash
cash
pay.
pay.
Cash
Yep.
pay, right? That's the conversation.
There was just an entire conference on that model where they're switching practices. They don't care if you have insurance. That's wonderful for you. We'll give you the bill. We'll give you the super bill, if you will, and you can submit it to your insurance and you chase them down and get your payment. They don't want to do it anymore. But then who gets stuck? The patient, the mother with 3 children, the geriatric parents, and then they're looking at you going, I don't know how to upload this and I don't know how to scan that. And I'm simply, or I don't have a computer or I don't have a scanner or insert problem here.
Mhm.
And then what do? How do they get care? So then we say, okay, well, what if we did an income-based cash pay model? Well, that creates a problem too. That's not enough. They're not able to sustain that pressure. So some of the things that I consult on and some of the things that we do is we create more of a pyramid structure, creating a support team for a physician or two that is comprised of lower salary staff so that they can still have enough support, but perhaps we're not paying the salary of 4 or 5 physicians in the same team.
Okay. So you're coming up with models that are, I'm assuming, that are working better, right? Or working comparatively.
So it goes back to the conversation we were just having. So the nurse practitioner
Mhm.
stares at her schedule, or he, I don't know who it was. I think it was a nice young lady. She was lovely, but she stared at her schedule and she said, gosh, this is, I'm so busy while staring at the schedule. You bring in the seasoned physician who makes good money and you should pay him that way. Uh, and he says, I just saw 59 patients. Why are you still standing here?
Hmm.
So
So how do we so what's the bridge? Is the bridge helping having the seasoned physicians help these younger physicians coming in, or and with the anxiety? Because again, this is a new world we live in where anxiety, these things that weren't talked about 25, 30 years ago are much more prevalent, but also we're consuming information at a rate that is tenfold than it was 30 years ago.
yeah,
So
they come
more
into my office and tell me what's wrong with them, not the other way around. Right? Like,
and
"Oh,
that
I already know what's wrong." I'm like, "Oh, do you now?" So, it's all very interesting.
yeah.
The solution is to mentor, train, and develop systems. The problem is that, physicians didn't go to school for that. That's not what they went to school for. And developing systems and automations and operations, they get buried in it, and it becomes this, competing agenda of rabbit trails, right? It's like
Mhm.
they're either knee deep in patient care or knee deep in operations. And at the end of the day, they look at me and they say, I've never worked this hard in my life. I'm exhausted.
And then we
Right.
lose them, and then they don't decide to continue medicine, and then we lose great, bright minds who wanna help the next generation be successful because they're just burnt from this hamster wheel, right? I don't know what else you would call it. It's a hamster wheel of just running around, right, hoping for another solution to come out.
But there is a solution. The question is, are you going to widen your lens enough and allow somebody else to lead the way for you when that is very scary? You didn't go to business school. You are not a healthcare CEO. You are not a healthcare consultant. You are not an expert in sales. Will you be willing to step aside and allow someone else to drive that while you deliver the expert care?
And what's the statistics on it? How many people are open to that conversation compared to the ones who are pushing back?
Most private practices push back. If it's their clinic, they'll push back. You'll come in, you try to do your job, they'll say, no, thanks, I don't like what you're doing. You don't understand. And they're probably right in many ways that we don't understand exactly what they're doing. That takes time and it takes mentoring and it takes training. So they're going to have to do that first. I think the other issue is that it's short sighted. So you have to really think if I work really hard today and I hustle for the next, I don't know, 2 years and really burn myself at both ends, will I be able to then say, okay, great, I've automated my practice, I've trained a team of people, and I am able to step back. However, if they continue to run operations and clinic on their own, I think what's going to happen is just a burnout and we're going to lose them. And that is unfortunate because I know a really, really great physicians.
So when you were in high school, I'm kind of going to ask you this question twofold
Do it.
because I can't imagine, but again, I could be wrong. Was this the conversations you thought you'd be having?
Oh, God, no. I was going to be an attorney. At one point, it was criminal defense, it was international relations, but it was always something along the lines of law and business. And no, I didn't think that this is where I would end up.
What was the plan? You were in high school, your junior year, you're getting ready for the SATs. What was the long term? Was it Wharton? Was it school? What was it? What was your interest?
So I was an immigrant. My family was broke. And my mom kept saying, stop applying to all these schools. You have to go to community college. We don't have any money. And
Mhm.
I said, I'll figure it out. And I ended up going, it's true, for 3 semesters to BCC right here, and then transferring and testing out of a bunch of stuff. taking these tests because I couldn't afford to sit for all the classes and the tests were much cheaper. So I sat down and tested out. And I was 19 when I graduated college. And then I looked at myself and I said, well, congratulations, you're officially graduated and have no idea what you're going to do. And it didn't help that I was an international student still because we had diplomat status at the time. I wasn't even a citizen. So I couldn't even get a job. So I was finally got a work permit and we green card, whatever, things happen. And
Yep.
I'm bartending and I'm waiting tables and I took the LSAT and the GRE and all those fun things. And I had an MBA by 21 and I had a year of law school. And I looked at all these attorneys at internship and I said, oh, gosh, that looks terrible. I don't want to do that.
I'm sure they all appreciate watching here right now when they would.
I was like, I looked at them with their big suitcases and their big suit. They had these suits and Miami heat is so bad. I'm living downtown. And I said, there's just no way I'll survive that. And at the time I had a mentor and I asked him and I said, hey, do you like being a criminal defense attorney? What should I do? And he said, and run. And
Wow.
I said, oh man, okay. So I said, but you don't love it? And he said something that I'm not sure we could say on the air, but you could edit it if you want. He said, even the owner of a bordello eventually gets sick of his job. And I said, okay. And so I quit and I went back to the drawing board and I was a whopping 21 and a half or something. And I applied to get my doctorate in forensic psych. I did clinical and forensic specialization and I loved it. I was super happy with that. And during residency, I started working for a practice that I later ended up just buying out. And it sort of took off from there. I opened more locations and paid off that loan. It wasn't as easy as I'm making it sound. There was a lot of trials and tribulations through that.
Oh, don't worry. I'm about to ask about all of that. You're not going to get away with that scotch-free. You don't go from junior year to law school and just expect I'm not going to poke some holes here now because I'm interested. Got my ears
I
up.
was 17 getting out of junior year in high school. I was pretty young. I skipped a year. But yes, feel free to ask anything.
Yeah. So that's first of all, it's a blessing and it is amazing. Obviously, if anyone's watching this and doesn't think she's amazing, I don't know what you need to look at to see that. But so you leave law school and you say to yourself, hey, being an attorney is soul sucking. Let me find something that maybe can rejuvenate me in some way. And medicine is the thing. That's the thing you thought of.
No, I thought I was going to go into like some forensic arena where I was working as a jury selection specialist or
Okay.
something really cool. And I even applied to the academy and they accepted me and I was going to be in the behavioral science unit and all this cool stuff. And then they
Yeah.
said, hey, we'd love to have you. And I thought, oh, great. Finally, someone appreciates what I've done. And they said, but for your accounting and your 3 languages and your MBA, we're less interested in the psychology. And then I said, okay. And they said, we need someone in terrorism. And I said, okay. And then they said, also, you can never come back to Miami. And I said, nah, I'm not doing that either. So I went back to the drawing board and bought the business and started expanding it. The person I bought it from incidentally said he was retiring. He was a little bit older at the time. I realize now he looked old to me then, but he wasn't that old. But anyway, he said he was retiring and I believed him and I signed this agreement that I should not have signed, which gave me my first lesson in contracts. And after the 2 years of me paying him when our non-compete expired, he went and tried to take back all of the clients he'd sold me in the asset purchase.
That is a lesson.
Oh my God.
Not all business owners who are listening to this are all going, yep, we've had that partner. We've had that person. We're all the same exact. So what could you give some people who are listening to this, who are young entrepreneurs, young ladies who are looking at you as such a role model in that sense, because you are such a role model, what information can you give them? Because obviously you found some of your calling here and, you got battered and bruised a little bit. What should have you looked out for that could have given you some of the information or, obviously it's not perfect world. Is there anything you could tell these people when they're going to their first business? Hey, watch out for this. Cause I think that's also so insightful for you. Cause you know what you did wrong. You know where you made the and could have protected yourself, but time, learning, age, we all, we figure it out at some point.
Right. A lot of things. First of all, just for the record, the clients were so happy with our services that they didn't jump ship. I got lucky, but I lost a lot in legal fees and I had to pay his. So that was painful. So review that contract carefully. And don't assume you're going to win. Assume a worst case scenario when you're discussing those terms. Make sure that there are protections in there for the bad days, not just the upsides. So I'm actually going through this right now. I reviewed a contract and offer 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and they must have put everything in there to protect their downside, but the kitchen sink. I mean, it was one of those contracts that you look at and you're like, man, if I could get terms like that, I'd buy businesses all day long. Lucky you. Obviously, I'm not signing that contract.
Not a
But it was a
win-win contract, is that? No.
no. So read it thoroughly and understand that it's on those rainy days, it's on those bad days, it's when revenue is really low and you're out of cash. That's when that's going to come calling. That will be that day of reckoning, and you're going to need to rely on your contract. Do your due diligence, read it. And if you don't know what you're doing, call someone who does, because that's going to change your life. The other thing is that looking busy and being busy isn't the same as being productive. So I watch people run themselves in these circles, these little tornadoes, and I just sit there and they'll ask you, what does she do all day? I promise you do a lot of things all day. But looking busy and talking about being busy is not going to make you productive ever.
No,
So
it just is a form of complaining, right? At the end of the day.
you're just complaining. There's also a difference between being busy personally and being busy professionally. And you need to understand that difference and balance that. So if you're overwhelmed, you can't say, oh gosh, I'm so busy. I have so many personal things on my calendar. It's which is it? How can you clear that? How can you balance that? What can you do to make this lighter for you so that you're not feeling the way you are? Because otherwise you're just complaining and wasting more time.
Yeah. And there's no point, right? There is no psychological benefit of complaining. I was just listening to this the other day that it doesn't do you any real good, right? Finding
Right.
solutions are your driver to make problems happen. And obviously you got your first business. You obviously solved that problem. So where did you decide to say, hey, I'm this person who's just awesome and I'm buying businesses? What was the second business that, or what made you feel like you were ready to take the next step? Because obviously as a business owner, whether it be ATMs or opening up a dry cleaner or whatever you're a part of or into, there has to be that next step from the business standpoint. When did you
Right.
know to make that decision? Because I think that's a tough one for a lot of people.
It's funny that you're asking that, because I have I have two 30-year-old sisters, but I was giving one of them the speech the other day. She was like, how do you know? And she's getting a, young, she's young. And I said, nothing will replace experience and confidence. And the way you know is because you know that you can do it. So the first time you thought it was like, oh, I got lucky. But then by the second clinic, you're like, maybe I know how to do this. And then by the fourth, you're like, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. And gaining that confidence and understanding that, yes, you can, makes a world of difference. Because if you can do every job in your business, even when you open a restaurant, if you know how to do the dishes and bartend and wait tables and work the POS system, you can effectively run the business and train whomever comes in. So as long as you have that confidence and you know that you are able to do it, you stay in the game. And the minute it stops making you happy, and the minute you're not satisfied, and the moment that it's not making you excited to get up and go do it, that's when you say, hey, all right, maybe this isn't for me anymore.
That's so insightful, being excited about your business. I think that's something that a lot of people get into the business world. And, I'm also one of those people who have jumped into, I have multiple businesses as well. And I jumped into it, and one of them doesn't always make me very happy, but the other ones, right?
Have one of those.
I got one of those, but the other ones, they relatively have their problems, right? No business is perfect, because that's what business is, right? It's an imperfect process. But like you said, you need to know when to move on and when to change your mindset, like you did when you were going to school as an attorney and you decided to make that decision to go in a different path. Now,
Yes.
what has given you the strength to understand and trust yourself? Because that is the next thing that most entrepreneurs don't understand is, when can I trust my gut, right? I love when people say it's my gut, it's my gut. What helped you understand that your gut was right? And I'm sure there was some problems like I've had as well, where things don't always go our way. But when was the time you decided you knew it was that?
I mean, things aren't even going my way every day right now. Things always end up one
Oh,
way or another. I think a couple of things happen. One is when you're self-made and when you come from very little,
mhm.
um, and you've done it on your own, you have the understanding and cognition that, hey, I did this, I'm able to do this. And if I could do it once, I could do it again. That's number one. It's grit. In a way, it's grit. Let's call it grit. The other is relying on your own skill set to kick in when it needs to. And I don't mean that I like what I do every single day. I mean, I'm not here to sell you some novel about a fairy tale. There are days that I'm like, gosh, this is terrible. But I love business. I love doing business. I'm in the business of business. And it's funny that you asked this today because I literally had this conversation a few weeks ago. They said, what are we doing? It was something we were doing. And I said, I don't even care if we're selling mops. Like, is it janitorial services? I love this idea. Let's do it because I liked the software. I liked what they were looking at. I thought it was a good idea that they were looking at and I was consulting on. So I think you have to like founding it or being a part of it and enjoy that rush because if you don't, you're just going to feel drained and exhausted.
And that is, we'll call the startup a circle, right? Anytime you get into the word, I think anyone hears the word startup, it's like nails on a chalkboard, right? Because it can be the most wonderful, amazing thing, but at the same time, be the most soul crushing thing. So what's
Mhm.
kept you in this line of work? So, I understand you're, putting out books, you're opening practices, what's kept you happy as long as you've been in this and kept you going and given you that extra edge compared to everybody else because you were happy to wake up that day to do it.
I think you have to like a challenge. People who don't enjoy the challenge, the competition, awesome, what's next? This isn't fun for them. It's a cortisol nightmare, right? Because you're anxious and you're worried and you're like, what if this doesn't work? And it very well may not. And that's okay too, because some of the things that didn't work were my best lessons yet. My biggest mistakes, the biggest financially draining things that I've gone through. I had a CBD oil a few years ago. It did great for a while. And then, we closed it down because there were so many regulations and there were so many things going on. We spent a lot of money on that. Amazon killed us. I learned so much about regulations, Amazon, how to do things. It was a really great experience. And it brought me to the next thing and the one after that. So a failure doesn't mean you failed. It just means this idea failed. And that's okay too.
Failing forward is what I like to call it, right? That's the
Love
only way
it.
to look at it. When you're in the business world, the mindset of you want to do business, it shouldn't matter what you're doing. The doing is just the part that gives you a little extra horsepower. The cafecito, right, is what it is. It's not going to be the main line. Now,
Yeah. I tell my sister when she says, "What do I do? It looks so the mountain's so big." I said, "Go fall on your face." And she said, "What?" I said, "Just go fall on your face." And she was like, "I can't believe this is your advice." I said, "It's the best advice you're ever gonna get. Go mess this up."
and that's what I tell people who are still in the employment world that are looking to transition to the entrepreneurial side. Say you're working with somebody's money for free. You know that, right? I go, you may think that you are whatever, you're a mechanic and you want to get ASC certified, or you're an NP and you want to maybe go back to school, and you
Right.
want to be a physician, you want to take that next step. You're playing with the house's money. And it's great for you to take that opportunity to learn. It's like grad school for you. You're not getting a degree, but you're getting something even better, which is an experience
Fear.
that somebody else can't take away from you, right?
Nobody can take that from you.
And it's stuck in your mind. You'll never forget it. So
That's right.
I'd love to know what is two things. First, what was the most exciting thing or experience that kind of led you and kept you on your path? And then what was kind of the most frustrating thing as you were building and creating this empire, if I can call it that?
I think the most exciting thing was knowing that I got it right. So, going from that one clinic to two clinics, and then, oh my gosh, we're at five. The realization that it wasn't an accident, that it actually worked, that is probably the best. And I think maybe that's what you get addicted to oh my God, it worked. I can do this. And I would say the most disheartening after the lawsuit where the mentor tried to take my business back was several years back when, I I had a executive exodus, if you will, and a poisoned well. And it was one of those moments in the exec room where you look around and you said, wow, 8, 9 years with these people, and here we are. And I think that built so much more character for me and the ability to see through and navigate and understanding that rebuilding is just that. You just start over. And if you know what you're doing and if you know how, the proof is in the pudding. No one can take that from you. So rebuilding, doing it again. And if it works again, then guess who did that? It wasn't those people, it was you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fall short of the goal because they're worried about failure. They're worried about what people's perception is. When you take that ability to be worried about the world around you and worried about just what's in your own mind, right? Your limits and getting down the rabbit hole of psychology, like your limits are within your mind, right? If you can break past your mind's limits, what's stopping you other than the fear of disappointing others? Don't disappoint yourself. No one's ever a disappointment. It's a failing forward, and it's an opportunity for something else.
Absolutely. And I have those moments from time to time. I'm turning 45 this summer. From time to time, I'm like, Ann, people are saying XYZ. You could put on a suit and go over there and just prove what you're doing all day. And then I sit there and I take a step back and I'm like, why would I do that? I know what I'm doing all day. I know what I've made. I know what I've achieved. I know where I've gotten. I know I went back to Harvard Business School to do even more. It was later in my career. I am always learning, always evolving, trying to do better and asking for help. I'm constantly asking. Someone asked me the other day, he said, you're really interested in me coming with you to this mediation or looking at this, or I forget what it was, but I said, are you kidding? Do you know how hard it is to find smart people to learn from? Yes, please teach me. I want you to teach me. I want to learn.
Yeah. And I'm going to take a guess and say that they were excited to do that, because most people who recognize that somebody wants to learn something and genuinely cares. And I say this to people all the time who ask me, well, why'd you start your business? How'd you do this? How'd you do that? We want to tell you. It's not a secret. There is no secret handshake or high five. Everyone wants to give you the ladder. Success is here. It's for you to take. It's not for us to give you, but it's us to help push and boost you to that next opportunity. So you can do it. It's all on you.
Right. And it's not a self-help book. It's a business. It's entrepreneurial spirit. It's taking the risk. It's knowing to bet on you. And that doesn't mean I don't have an amazing team, because I do. And it doesn't mean that we don't have support, because we do. But if you're at the helm and you're afraid to jump, everybody else is staring at you, and that fear becomes contagious.
I agree. 100%. So I always like to ask a question. Anyone who comes on the podcast, very hard hitting here, very difficult. If you could ask anybody in the world, dead or alive, one question about anything, it does not matter what the question is. Doesn't matter who the person is, again, whether they're living or not. Who would that person be, and what would that question be?
That is very heavy hitting. I wasn't ready for that. I think, I went to a samurai retreat recently in Turkey. They hosted a bunch of women in leadership, CEOs, and they taught us a lot about the ancient art of mind and body. And I was taught that you want to keep yourself at 60%. And I said, what does that mean? They said, invest only 60%. And I said, how do you do that? I mean, your children, your business, your family. And then also, how did you pick 60, not 50 or 70? Here I am breaking this code that they've had for thousands of years that I have no idea about. And his answer, the sensei, he said, 50 is too little because you're indecisive, and 70 leans in too hard. At 60%, you give just enough, but don't over-engage that it clouds your judgment, which is all very sophisticated.
Yeah.
So I think maybe I would want to go back in time, and I'm not sure who I would ask exactly, but someone in that discipline, someone who lived this and understood this, and someone who maybe was there at the start. And I would say, how did you figure this out? And what exactly is the equation to that? And how does one do that? How does one lean in just enough and stay separated just enough? And how do you love your kids that way? And how do you separate from your systems in that way? And I would like to know that.
I would love to know that. That is equilibrium at its best, as I like to call it. That's an amazing answer. I love it. And I would love to find out. Now, is there a good book that you recommend, other than obviously your book, which I'm going to ask a little bit more about in a second, that you were working on with that specifically, that would help somebody learn about 60%?
So the book they gave us, and the book that I was part of my training, was Zen and the Art of Archery. And it's not actually about archery. It is amazing. Everyone should read it. It's short. It's fascinating. And I do think that correlates well with the topic we were just on.
Yeah, no, that correlates really well. I'm excited, and I have to write it down so I don't forget it, because I'll do that. So with your book coming out, I know you said you spent about a year or so on it. What was the main reason you decided to start it, and what got you through it? Because those are two really big things, especially writing a book.
So it was completed last summer. And I sort of sat there and stared at it. And there were so many things I wanted to change about it that I needed some help with the editing. I think I was having too many thoughts at once, and they weren't coherent enough for a third party. They made sense to me. So that's what I did. I put it back together. I read it again, edited it again, and then about 30 days ago, actually hammered it out. And what inspired the book was that my COO asked me, he said, Anne, what exactly is it that you tweak when these people come talk to you? What exactly are you changing? And because these people are amazing, the CEOs you talk to, the leaders that ask you these questions, what are you doing? And I said, oh, no. They have all of the answers to Maslow's hierarchy. They are incredible people. They're actualized. They have just tiny little ways to go, just something small that isn't clicking, and it keeps them from coming into themselves fully. And that was what the book was about, the integration of that biology and psychology to click that final push, that final coming, that the becoming of oneself when you've realized that you're there.
So who would this person be that should be reading your book? Because I think that's what the readers are going to want to know as well. So who is the best person who could benefit from getting this book in their hands as soon as possible?
That's the beauty of it, and this is why I had to go back and redo it, because now it is officially for everybody. It's for the
Awesome.
executive, the CEO who wants to just take it one step further, but knows like 80% of what's in the book, but is
Mhm.
missing just like the reiteration, the me repeating it one more time. It's for the person who just wants to learn about anti-aging and peptides and what does that have to do with psychology? It's for providers, it's for everybody, because the book is really about that final becoming when psychology and biology converge and you finally come into yourself. That we can't just fix you. You have to be in a position to accept.
You can't you can't expect the outside world to change. You need to change yourself to the outside world and fit the world around you.
My
And
mentor likes to say happiness is very difficult to find within, but impossible to find anywhere else.
that's a mentor I'd like to hear from. That's a smart one.
Yes, sir.
I love that. All right, Dr. Ann, I really appreciate you taking the time today to speak with us. I'm sure all your patients are waiting behind your exquisitely looking chair, waiting to speak with you as well as the rest of your clients and business professionals. Before we go, though, can you please let our listeners know where can they find you? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You have a web page. Can you please let us know? Because I'm sure they're going to want to find out.
Sure. Drann.com, DRANN.com, and you'll find all the Instagram links and everything else there. And I'm also on LinkedIn.
And we'll make sure we put them in the video also, guys, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, anything. We'll make sure to link them back there because we love Dr. Ann. She's awesome. Dr. Ann, thank you so much for being on today. We really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Outstanding job, and we look forward to talking with you more.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.